color, I've seen it change dramatically. And I have to tell you, I am super duper excited about today.
You know, one of the things I love about working here the most is our culture. You know, it gets me up in the morning. I just so enjoy it. And there's so many things about our culture that I think is fantastic in terms of our ability to give back, our ability to work with so many people. And our culture, it runs like not only through the organization from an employee perspective, but from it's with our partners, it's with our customers, and it's with the communities around us as well.
That's right, absolutely, Julie. And this is our Ohana. This is a big family reunion, and I too love our culture, and I love, you know, our core values of equality and giving back and charity, and just all of it. And part of that, you know, the whole 1-1-1 methodology that we all embrace. I've worked in STEM, I've worked with Girls Who Code, Technovation, as well as Black Girls Code. So I'm excited to be here.
That's fantastic. I know you got an award for something like that too, didn't you, Leanne? You know, it is so great to give back, and there's so many ways of doing that. And here at Dreamforce, we've had that opportunity to have many things available as far as giving back. You've seen them all over the campground. We've had kids here learning how to code. We've had kids coding camps this week. And then we also have, let's see here, somewhere in the audience, we have some boys and girls from the Boys and Girls Clubs of Oakland. Where are you? There you are. Young trailblazers. In fact, I think we're going to talk to a couple young trailblazers. Leah, who do you have over there?
Well, yes, we do. We have some young, energetic trailblazers. Why don't you introduce you? Give me your name and how old are you?
I'm Tyler Tooth, Jr., and I'm 13. I'm Jada Ball, and I'm 13.
I'm McCullough, Gym Director.
Awesome. Now, you guys are out of the Boys and Girls Club of Oakland, yes?
Yes.
What do you do there?
At the Boys and Girls Club, we do a lot of things from sleepovers to homework, the teen room where all teens go, 13 and up.
We do art room, we go in the gym, we play with bumper pool, we play multiple things.
So it sounds like you guys have fun and work hard there. Now you guys have been at Dreamforce. What did you do at Dreamforce?
We did coding.
Coding is cool, right?
Yeah.
See, these are our young trailblazers blazing the way. They're our next technologists, yeah?
Yeah.
I need a little bit more energy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming up and sharing with us. So excited. Thank you so much. Over to you, Julie.
That's adorable. So I have with me two lovely ladies from General Growth Properties. They own and manage and lease best-in-class retail companies, properties all over the U.S. They continue to grow in their success as an organization, but they're also very progressive internally as well. I have with me Gretchen Horn, VP of Application Development, and Priya Cochran, who's VP of Salesforce at GGP. Now, Priya, I'm trying to understand with you guys, how did you divide and conquer Dreamforce this year as far as getting to know and make new connections and things like that?
Yeah, Julie, we brought about 13 people across our business operations and technology teams. We really wanted to divide and conquer so we could maximize our connections. So we kind of went a strategic route and an organic route. So from a strategic route perspective, we really tried to connect with our peers in the real estate industry. And then from an organic perspective, this is such a great environment for networking with people of different backgrounds, experiences, and roles.
Now, Gretchen, I understand that you also make time for some of your key partners that you can connect with here as well. Tell me a little bit about that from an IT perspective.
Yeah, this week we met with Jitterbit. They're our immigration platform vendor, and their product is really key to our success. They help us connect our back and front offices together, so it's very important we have those strong relationships, and Dreamforce is the place to do it.
Now, from an IT perspective, I understand you're fairly progressive. You've got some female leadership going on there, and that's often an area where we have some challenges. Tell me what program you have going on in the IT world.
In the IT world, well, actually, we have a mentoring program that is actually built by Priya, but we are connected with young women throughout the company, leaders matched with young women, and it's been a great success.
Now, I hear applauding over there. That's fantastic. That is really great that you have such a program going on now. Now, Priya, I understand that you're actually part of the program. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this is our inaugural year of our women's mentoring program. So we really want to give women additional exposure within the company. So we paired every mentee with a mentor who was a senior leader who was in a different department so that they had a fresh perspective. I wasn't an expert at creating these types of programs, so I really did a lot of research on the internet and created simple tools so we could find a shared interest or experience between each mentor and mentee so that they could get the most out of the relationship.
How long has this program been going on? How long has it gone for now?
About 9 months so far, so this is our first year and we're really excited about all the feedback and all the energy that we've been getting from everybody.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here and sharing a little bit about GGP and definitely sharing a lot about your programs that you have in place for women. Leah, back to you.
Thank you, Julie. And I am honored to have with me Ms. Carrie Hoffman from Johnson Controls, Vice President, Information Technology. Give it up for Carrie. Carrie, so tell me, Johnson Controls utilizes IoT and digital business. Explain a little bit about what you guys do.
Sure, yeah, we do. Johnson Controls is a global diversified leader in both technology and a multi-industrial. And we have intelligent buildings, and we have efficient energy storage, and we're delivering on the promise of smart cities and smart buildings.
That sounds awesome. Tell me a little bit more when we talk about smart cities, what does that exactly mean, if I wanted to break that down?
Yeah, sure. So we've been in digital business for actually a long time. We have building automation systems and controls, and we've done that for quite a while. IoT really ups the game for us. Now we have connected chillers. We're able to have the chiller call back and say, I'm not operating quite right. That goes to our call center, that goes to our service reps, and we're able to deliver to our customers some preventative maintenance so the building never ends up heating up, it stays cool, and their energy usage is always efficient.
Awesome. Now, when we met, you told me you have a twin, and I was like, do you know something I don't know? But what were you exactly talking about?
So almost everybody has a twin. I have to say almost everybody because the monks don't have a twin, but anybody with one of these has a digital twin. And the digital twin is important because that experience that we're able to deliver in the building is changing. Now the occupants in the building have a digital twin, and when they come in, their preferences of lighting and temperature are there, and it creates an awesome experience for the occupants. Now for the building owners, that is able to give them higher occupancy in their building. And also, if I go back to that connected chiller, their energy is utilized at a great level, and we're delivering an outcome that they're willing to pay for.
Awesome. Thank you so much. A woman in tech for sure here. Thank you for sharing that with us, Carrie. Back over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Leah. So innovation disruption seems to be everywhere these days in the digital world, and when you have all this going on so rapidly, how does one company compete with another in terms of their online designs? And the answer is they harness the power of design. I have two guys with me today. I have Ryan Burke, who's VP of Sales, and Ryan Meeker, so I have two Ryans. He is Director of Sales Operations at InVision, and this is an organization that's created a product which is a design platform to allow companies to collaborate and design and make those amazing apps that all you guys use today. So I'm going to start with one Ryan here. This is the perfect time for a company like InVision. Tell me about InVision and like why now? Why is it so popular?
Sure. Yeah, so I think people realize now that design is the new competitive advantage, right? So companies are understanding that your product
school system may not be perfect, but it works pretty well. We're very, very lucky. Those of us who have been successful in life, I think we have a great opportunity to give back to those who might not have had that same luck. It's the cruelest fate for a 5-year-old, 6-year-old to be told you're born in the wrong place at the wrong time, so you're not going to get educated. There'll be one more generation to live in poverty.
Education is an amazing tool. It can unlock solutions to almost every problem you can think of in the world. And that's Room to Reach's job, is to ensure that every child is reached through education.
When the Khmer's occupied the country, I lost my parents because of the genocide regime. And I becoming an orphan kid since I was about 12.5 years old, forced to work in the rice field, and until 6-7 years later, I back to school. I remember all my parents told me, no matter where you are, make sure you go to school. And that's why I always have dream. If I have money, I will build a school for my parents and dedicate to my parents. I do believe in all the tragedy, the poverty, all these things people suffer here. It's a root at people have no education. If they had been educated, I don't think the genocide regime would take place in Cambodia. So our strategy here is to make sure children have access to school. Because like the philosophy say here, can't start with educated children.
Statistically, 2/3 of those who are out of school, 2/3 of those who are illiterate are girls and young women. We also know that when a girl or a woman gets educated, it changes everything. It changes things for the family, for the community, for the whole society. That's why Room decided to have a special focus on girls and women.
So walking into Pire's house and meeting her parents and her younger sister to show us the bookshelf, that clearly Pire just has so much pride in her bookshelf. She's got all these medical books. She wants to be a doctor. It's amazing. That's a bold dream for a 15-year-old girl. You know, the mother pointed out the one light that they have in the house, and with such pride that her daughter could sit under that one light. There was so much love and joy in the family, and they're so proud of their daughter.
If a girl stays in school just one extra year in secondary school, her earning potential goes up by 15 to 20% every year. If she makes it to the end of 12th grade, she is a completely different future in front of her.
The fact that over 28,000 girls are now enrolled in our long-term girls education program, the fact that we have worked in over 1,800 villages, the fact that there's over 17,000 communities where we run our library and literacy program. We have to be able to track all of that. Salesforce has been a really important partner for Room to Read from the very beginning.
We're really lucky to have Salesforce. We really wouldn't be the organization that we are without having those metrics and the information and the data to share with people. It's just an integral part of how we operate.
And I'll never forget one time I emailed Mark and I was like, oh, I hope he at least reads it. And I got a reply within literally about 45 seconds. And he said, whatever you guys need, comma, you get. And that was it.
I'm incredibly grateful to be in Cambodia, both with my local staff and also with an incredible group of volunteers from Salesforce. We worked together with Salesforce to fund the building of a new structure for these families, and to be able to provide them with just a safe place to come home to is just an amazing opportunity.
Kids in Nepal, a landlocked state, ask me, what does the ocean taste like, right? I've had children in Cambodia, which never gets below like 95 degrees, ask me, what does snow feel like? What does it feel like to be cold? They read about it in a book.
The Room to Read's vision is very simple. It's to tell every kid in the world you were born at the right place at the right time, because we were there for you, Salesforce was there for you.
On behalf of Cambodian children, we were really thankful to Salesforce. I went to Pagoda and a ritual festival. I prayed to my parents, and I told them that I build school for them once every month at least.
If you can reach that many children, and then they grow up to raise an educated family, they grow up to be part of a peaceful, productive, stable society. This is right up there with the Archimedes quote, give me a lever long enough and I can move the earth. 15 million kids getting educated is a pretty long lever.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Equality Officer, Salesforce, Tony Profit.
Thank you. Wow, that video was so inspiring, so powerful. So it's my honor to welcome you here today, and I'd like to welcome our customers, our partners, our employees, and our friends. we are so thrilled, so proud, and so grateful to be with you here today. And I have the distinct honor of opening the keynote panel. And I'm going to share a little bit about my personal equality journey and a little bit about the equality journey ahead for Salesforce. Now, the equality journey for me, the foundation of it is my mother. Now, my mother grew up in rural Oklahoma in the 1930s and 1940s. Now, at that time, job opportunities for a black woman were limited. You could basically clean someone's house, you could cook their food, and if you were trusted and really competent, you could take care of their children. Now, my mother believed in herself, and she wanted more. So she enrolled in Langston University. And in 1951, she became the first person in our family to graduate from college, ultimately becoming a teacher. And she taught me by her lifetime example that her opportunities would not be defined and limited by her race, and that nor would mine. And so she told me early and in every opportunity, you're going to be somebody. You're going to be great. You're going to go to college. You're going to be professional. Maybe even a doctor. At a time when I had never even seen a black professional, let alone a black doctor. Now at Salesforce, we believe that nobody's opportunity should be defined or limited by their race, or by their gender identity, or by their sexual orientation, or by their religion, or by their age, or limited by a disability, or by any affiliation. So you heard in Mark's keynote that our ambition, our higher purpose, is to drive toward an age of equality. And the foundation of that drive is a focus on STEM-based K-12 education. And our equality platform has 4 pillars: equal pay, equal opportunity, equal advancement, and equal rights. Equal rights within the workplace, and being an advocate for equal rights in the communities in which we operate. Now we acknowledge we've got a long journey ahead. And the tech community has a long journey ahead. And I think we all would acknowledge that this nation has a long journey ahead. Now this was a terrible, terrible, sad day in this nation. And this was a tough day to show up for work being black. Put yourselves in the shoes of your black colleague. Think how it felt to show up for work being black that day. I'll tell you how I felt. I grieved and I mourned for those 5 slain officers in Dallas. And I felt anger and confusion. And honestly, I felt some shame that this could happen in this great nation, that a black person ostensibly was involved in this. I felt shame, but there was no place to hide because everybody was talking about this event. Now this was also a sad day, a terrible sad day in this nation. And think about this day, or the days surrounding Ferguson, or the days surrounding Charlotte, or the days surrounding Baton Rouge, or the days surrounding Baltimore, or that list of cities, Tulsa, that are almost too long at this point to remember. And think about what it felt like to show up for work black on that day, and nobody was talking about it. So in my equality journey, one of my personal heroes is my son. And my son is a proud member of the LGBTQ community. And I am a proud LGBTQ dad. So So last year, my son was a freshman at college, took him there, and he taught me a simple but a powerful lesson. He gave me that button, that one magical word on it, ally. He said, early in the day, put this on. And magically, by publicly displaying that button and declaring myself to be an ally of him and the LGBT community at his school, I was empowered. I had a heightened sense of awareness of the issues and paying attention a lot more, and a heightened sense of accountability. So what about you? What about you all? Who here is willing to publicly declare themselves an ally in the fight against intolerance, in the fight against injustice, in the fight against hatred? Look at this young man. Look at this young man right here. Raised his hand. Raised his hand. He said he's willing to declare himself. So who else? Sorry, this young person right here raised their hand. Who else? Who else among us? Okay, if you're willing, I ask you to stand up. Stand up now. If you are unable to stand, just signal. Raise your hand by whatever means you're able, that you're willing to declare yourself an ally in the fight against injustice. So while we're all standing, let us welcome this iconic panel. I could not be more pleased to be associated with these great American heroes. Our moderator, Patty Sellers, Congressman John Lewis, Billie Jean King, Bernard Tyson. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Tony. And yes, talk about heroes. So I was at breakfast this morning at my hotel, and a man over at the next table, I overheard him say, "It's hard to have heroes anymore." And he was talking about most of the people in sports actually, because a lot of the heroes have fallen. And here we have on stage 3 bona fide heroes. So thank you for being that and staying that. So John Lewis has won the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Congressman John Lewis has won the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award for Lifetime Achievement. Billie Jean King has won the Presidential Medal of Freedom, same day, 2009. 39 Grand Slam championships. And Bernard Tyson, the chairman and CEO of Kaiser Permanente, has not received his Presidential Medal of Freedom yet, but it's coming. But he does have, underneath him, $62 billion in revenues, 190,000 employees, a very innovative and high-performance Fortune 500 company. So congratulations to all of you for all of that, first of all. I'm going to stay out of the way for the first 15 minutes of this, and I'm going to be tough on you, on each of you on time. But I would like to start out, because each of you has such a great story, an inspiring story. I would like each of you, and I'm going to start with you, John. He told me to call him John instead of Congressman Lewis. I'd like you to spend 5 minutes telling your story.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted and very happy, very pleased, and really honored to be here. I grew up in rural Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, outside of a little place called Troy. My father had been a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. But back in 1944, when I was 4 years old, and I do remember when I was 4, I really do, my father had saved $300 and a man sold him 110 acres of land. My family still owns this land today. On this farm there was a lot of cotton and corn, peanuts, hogs, cows, and chickens. And on the farm it was my responsibility to care for the chickens. And I fell in love with raising chickens. But as a little boy, I wanted to be a minister. So from time to time, to help with my brothers and sisters and cousins, we would gather all of our chickens together in the chicken yard. And my brothers and sisters and cousins were lying outside of the chicken yard. And I would start speaking and preaching. When I look back on it, some of these chickens would bow their heads, some of these chickens would shake their heads. They never quite said amen, but they tended to listen to me much better than some of my colleagues listen to me today in the Congress. and some of the chickens were just a little more productive. But growing up there, I saw those signs that said white men, white women, colored women, white waiting, colored waiting. And I would come home and ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents why. That's the way it is. Don't get in the way, don't get in trouble. When I was 15 years old in 1955, I heard of Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Martin Luther King Jr. on our radio. And the action of Rosa Parks, the words of Martin Luther King Jr., and the involvement of hundreds and thousands of people in Montgomery inspired me to find a way to get in the way, to get in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. So I went down in 1956 when I was 16 years old with some of my brothers and sisters and cousins to the public library, trying to check out some books, trying to get library cards. And we were told by the librarian that the library was for whites only and not for colors. I never went back to that library until July 5th, 1998, for a book signing in my first book, Walking with the Wind. The blacks and white citizens showed up. At the end of the program, they gave me a library card. It says something about the distance we've come and the progress we've made. Growing up, I didn't like segregation and racial discrimination, and I wanted to do something about it. I met Rosa Parks in 1957 when I was 17. The next year I met Martin Luther King Jr. Changed my life and set me on a path for activism. To help change America. To sit in, we'd be sitting down at a lunch counter in a restaurant, black and white college students, and some high school students, and some people would come up and spit on us, putting lighted cigarettes out in our hair and down our backs. Pull us over. I'm a student, and I got arrested. I went to jail the first time. So during the 60s and early 70s, I was arrested 40 times. And since I've been in Congress, I've been arrested another 5 times, and I'm probably going to get arrested again. My simple philosophy is when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up and speak out and get in the way, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. So I will not, for the rest of my life, tolerate discrimination based on race, or color, sexual orientation, or disability. My philosophy is we're one people, we're one family, we all live in the same house. Not just the American house, but the world house. Right.
John, we're going to get into some of the specific ways a little later. Over to Billie. Billie, your story.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to see John here in regard. It's great to see you. Good to see you. I grew up in Southern California, Long Beach, California, and I always played in team sports. My mom was a homemaker at first, and my dad was a firefighter and also a police officer at one of the other times. And growing up in team sports, a friend of mine said, "Do you want to play tennis?" Susan Williams in 5th grade. I said, "What's tennis?" I said, "What do you do?" She says, "You get to run, jump, and hit a ball." I said, "Those are my 3 favorite things in sports. I'll try it." So the second time I ever picked up a racket at the Park and Rec, they had a free instruction there, free coaching. I decided at the end of the day, I found what I was going to do with my life. I wanted to be the #1 tennis player in the world. That was at 11. Fast forward to 12. Now I'm playing in tournaments. I'm trying to get a ranking, and all that. And I'm daydreaming at the Los Angeles Tennis Club. And I start daydreaming about my sport. Everybody wears white shoes, white socks, white clothes. They play with white balls, and everybody who plays is white. And I asked myself this question: where is everybody else? Where is everybody else? And I started thinking about the world. I thought about Martin Luther King. I thought about Rosa Parks. Those people were very much on my mind at the time. Being in Southern California was very different. We didn't have the segregation the same way that you can only drink here or sit here or that. We didn't have that. And I never could understand it. In fact, I remember asking my dad, I go, "Why can't those people go to school in the Southeast, in the South?" He says, "Because they're Negroes," they said at that time. I said, "What?" I didn't understand that. So that day when I was 12, I promised myself I would fight for equal rights and opportunities for everybody the rest of my life. And I knew that I was really, really lucky, and that tennis was played all over the world. And that I had, in those days I wouldn't have called it a platform, but today I would, that I had an unbelievable opportunity compared to most children. I also have a younger brother, Randy Moffat. Of course, I'm in San Francisco, so of course I have to talk about this. He played 12 years in the major leagues, and 10 of those were for the San Francisco Giants as a relief pitcher. And he played great last night. But my sport was very amateur, and there was a lot to do to change it to what it is today. But a good friend of mine growing up was Arthur Ashe. He and I are the 2 in tennis that really thought about way beyond our sport. They talked about equality, talked about leadership, talked about being a disruptor, get in the way, right, when you have to. So I think when you want to make a difference, when someone discovers they want to make a difference, that changes one for all time. When I was that day when I was 12, it changed my whole life, my whole perception of what I wanted to do, what I could do, what was possible. And I was a Girl Scout.
I want to go back to that moment at 12 when we get back to you, because I've interviewed Billie. Billie and I live in the same neighborhood in New York. We go to the same gym. I've interviewed you on stage a couple of times. I never knew that you had that moment at age 12, but we'll go back to it. We'll go back to it. Bernard, your story.
First of all, it's quite intimidating to be sitting up here with this. So I have to tell you all, usually I'm cool, now I'm just shaking.
You're not playing tennis, Bernard. You're just
a good pitcher.
It's a deep honor. I mean, this is one of my idols and role models. He's taught me so much, and courage and standing up and making a difference and getting in the way. And that's what it's about. But when I was growing up, I grew up here in Vallejo, California. So I'm a local boy made good. And my mother, all my life, my mother has been sick. So when I was a kid, my mother used to go to the doctor.
She had diabetes, right?
Diabetes, and the doctor was incredible. He looked after my mother. She went to the hospital a lot. She got great care, and it was such a wonderful thing. And I've always wanted to be a doctor. To this day, I still want to be a doctor. We are going to open up a new medical school in Southern California. I might be the first medical student at that school. So I assumed that everybody got care like that. And so that was my bubble, that wow, what a great thing. And then I discovered that that wasn't true. Then as I grew older and wanted to get into the medical field, I started to learn that people were suffering unnecessarily. Some of it was about the color of your skin, and some of it was about you didn't have insurance. And I became passionate about this issue that we call today disparities of care.
Disparities of care.
Yeah, the inequity of care. That I got to see firsthand when I did my first internship in a hospital setting. I saw people walking in who suffered unnecessarily, who waited too long to come in for care. Because the American healthcare system is based on an insurance system. If you have the coverage, you have the key to the front door. And if you don't, you have to wait until you get so sick that you're willing to go into the emergency department to get your care, which by its nature means you're waiting too long. And so I have been a lifetime advocate of dealing with this issue of inequity of care. And that's my passion. That is why when we passed the Affordable Care Act, myself and many others, but myself and my organization, Kaiser permanente, stood up to be counted. And to this day, we fully support the Affordable Care Act.
I want to give you the chance to mention your father, who was a carpenter and a minister, who I know who was very influential in your life. And it's very, very interesting to me that you had, I've read about you, and I never heard that full explanation of how your ill mother truly inspired you to go into this field. And that's wonderful. And John, meeting Rosa Parks in 1957, Dr. Martin Luther King in 1958, am I right on the years? Okay, I get that, and we're gonna go there in a minute. I'm still not quite understanding how Billie was so evolved at age 12, a year after picking up a tennis racket and deciding I like tennis, that you were gonna fight for equal rights. I mean, even if you weren't using that term back then, you really thought about that back then? That's fascinating.
Well, I'm always reading biographies. I always love stories about people. And if you fast forward to 13, I got to see one of my sheroes play. And I'm a big believer, if you can see it, you can be it. And that's Althea Gibson. And Althea Gibson, most people don't even know who she is. She's really our Jackie Robinson of tennis. And I got to see her at the Los Angeles Tennis Club. It's a big tournament every year in September, about this time of year actually. And I actually got to see her. And she just had long arms, long legs, very intimidating. But I got to read her book, I Always Wanted to Be Somebody. I read that, I think she wrote it in 58 by this time.
That was the name of the book?
Yes, I Always Wanted to Be Somebody. And I read her journey. And I always tell young people, particularly with the election and all that, to read each person's journey. And you have a pretty good idea who they are. At least it's a good start. I used to sleep with that book every night. I probably read it 10 times. I read Tennis with Heart. That was about Doris Hart and her brother. You just have to read a book like I Always Wanted to Be Somebody. You have to just watch television, watch the news. I mean, it doesn't take a lot if can really sit there and listen and look at it. And knowing that I'm going to get to travel, I have opportunities. Now, I didn't know how to get there, and I floundered a lot. In fact, when I went to South Africa, I had opportunities I didn't realize. I was scared. You know, you get scared. I was scared. I was always scared.
We're always scared. What were you scared
I'm scared that I couldn't make something happen. I would hesitate. You know, I was brought up with the rules. You have to understand, my dad was in the Navy. My mother and my dad were very big on rules with my brother and me, very strict. So we didn't break rules very often. So you have to understand, if you're in South Africa, there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of rules about you can't do this, you can't do that. Like, I had a chance to go sit in the black section. They wouldn't let me. And of course, I invited. I should have been disrupted that day. I should have gone over there. But I hesitated. I got scared. So it takes a while to figure out how you could be effective. Also, I was hitting 10,000 balls a day, trying to win tennis match. I'm trying to do two things at once. But I also knew if I didn't become number one, nobody would listen. Or
you saw your
know when I have opportunities with others to listen to others as well, to meet others. It's a hard. And also, I was in a sport that was very backward to me. Growing up around baseball, football, basketball. Basketball was my first one. But it really goes beyond. But you notice the athletes today are reaching out, trying to help change. My generation did. There was there for a while with Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan didn't care too much. You didn't hear them talk about civil rights. Or now everyone's back again.
Right.
They're back. Now it's very interesting to see the evolution of this. Athletes have an unbelievable opportunity.
Yes.
They need to know how lucky we are. They need to use it for positive change. That we're one big community, the whole world, and we have to love, not hate. We have to have inclusion. We have to have equality. We have to try to see the other side of what people are feeling. Like when Tony Crawford.
You all have opportunities, and you've all had kind of forks in the road and hit obstacles.
Yes.
And tell me about John and Bernard, an obstacle that you hit. You had fear. You had a certain level of fear, and. But John, I mean, for those of you who do not know the John Lewis story, in 1963, John was one of the leaders of the March on Washington. He was the youngest speaker there when Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. In 1965, you were one of the leaders on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on the march from Selma to Montgomery. It became Bloody Sunday. Anybody who saw the movie Selma, John, the character of John Lewis is in that movie. You had your skull fractured, correct? And you went on TV and called for President Johnson to intervene. Am I right about that? Yes. So talk about heroism, but did you consider something like that in the moment? Let's talk about Bloody Sunday. Did you consider that an obstacle or an opportunity or both at the time?
Well, someplace along the way, I made up my mind. I guess I had what I called an executive session with myself. I just didn't talk back to myself. And that I was going to give everything I had to make it possible for all people to be able to participate in the democratic process. In Alabama, where I grew up, people had to pass a so-called literacy test. People were asked from time to time to count the number of bubbles on a bar of soap, the number of jelly beans in a jar. I've been working in Selma, Alabama. I've been working in Mississippi, and I saw countless numbers of people, teachers, lawyers, doctors, ministers, high school principals, college professors, been denied the right to register to vote. People been arrested and jailed and beaten. So we made a decision after a young man was murdered in the hometown of Mrs. Martin Luther King Jr., the home county of Mrs. Andrew Young and Mrs. Ralph Abernathy, that we were going to march from Selma to Montgomery on Sunday, March 7th. Some people said, no, we shouldn't do it. Others said, we must do it. And I said, if the people in Selma want to march, I've been arrested with them. I've gone to jail with them. I'm going to march with them. And we left after church on a Sunday afternoon, walking in twos. I was wearing a backpack before it became fashionable to wear backpacks. I thought we were going to be arrested and then we were going to go to jail. So I had an apple and orange in my backpack. I wanted to have something to eat. Had 2 books, had toothpaste, and a toothbrush. I wanted to be able to brush my teeth if I was going to be in jail with my friends, my colleagues, and neighbors. We get to the highest point on that Pettis Bridge. Down below we saw a sea of blue, Alabama State Troopers. And behind the State Troopers was Sheriff Clark, Jim Clark, posse on horseback. He had requested an old white man over the age of 21 to come down to the courthouse that Saturday night to be deputized. So we continued to walk. We came within hearing distance of the State Troopers. The major of the State Troopers identified himself and said, "I'm Major John Cloud of the Alabama State Troopers. This is an unlawful march, but not be allowed to continue. I give you 3 minutes to disperse and return to your homes or to your church." And a young man from Dr. King organization, walking beside me, the 2 of us were leading the march, said, "Major, give us a moment to kneel and pray." And you saw these guys putting on their gas masks. And I said, "Major, may I have a word?" He said, "There will be no word." They came toward us, beating us with nightsticks, trampling us with horses. I was the first one to be hit in the head. Had a concussion at the bridge. I thought I saw death. I thought I was going to die. And I said to myself, I'm going to die on this bridge. This is my last nonviolent protest. But somehow a group carried me back to the little church. Then I was asked to say something to the audience. And I stood up and said something like, "I don't understand it. How President Johnson can send troops to Vietnam and cannot send troops to Selma, Alabama to protect people who only desires to register and vote." The next thing I knew, I had been transported to the local hospital in Selma, Alabama, where a group of nuns took care of us. So 17 of us were hospitalized. Early that Monday morning, Dr. King came to visit me in my hospital room. I was still in the bed. And he said, "John, don't worry. We will make it from Selma to Montgomery, and the voter rights are going to be passed." And he said that he made a request for religious leaders to come to Selma that Tuesday. So on Tuesday, March 9th, more than 1,000 priests, rabbis, nuns, and ministers came and walked across that bridge. And there was a sense of righteous indignation all across America. People didn't like what they saw happening in the South.
Don't you think we should change that bridge name to John's? I think that is
sorry,
bridge.
what did you say?
That is bridge, Bloody Sunday. We should change that name of that bridge to John Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to see your name up there. Every time I see Pettis, I go, I think of you and of freedom, and I think about all that you went through. So I just want to thank you on behalf of the world.
Talk about, Bernard, a fork in your road or an obstacle that you faced and how you dealt with it.
Here we go again. I'm not even going to try.
After hearing John's story, we could go to Billie changing the face of the sports world. We'll go easier.
I would say to fast forward to today, which I think is a statement about where we are as a country and a nation, that a couple of years ago, you referenced my father earlier, and my father was a minister, my father was a carpenter, my father was my role model, and he taught me many things growing up in the church and then at home. And one of the scriptures that he used to talk a lot about was this whole notion about too much is given, much is required. And today, I translate that to my obligations. So a couple of years ago, as this nation was coming to terms with and beginning to talk more openly about the African American men who were killed, particularly by police officers. And the one that really got my attention at a deep, deep level was the Michael Brown murder. And it wasn't about who was right, who was wrong, and all of that. It was about a person lying on the ground for hours and the mother not being able to get to her son. It was about somehow dehumanizing an individual where you didn't have the instincts of a human relationship coming to terms with that. The second thing is, what I know a lot of people can't imagine that an African American man can, is that could be me. I can see myself there. And you walk with that fear and that understanding that it doesn't matter where you are in life, you can run into an incident. Whether that's true or not, it's a philosophy that you've seen enough that you believe it. And then you have your own experiences and you can visualize yourself in that predicament. So while that was going on, the narrative in the country was beginning to change from how awful it was about this kid, this young man who was killed, to a narrative that said, look what he was doing before all of this happened. So I decided that I had an obligation as a CEO of a $60 billion company who happens to be African American, who people believe has credibility and integrity and all those things, who considers me an exception, in many cases from the mental map that people think about African American men. So I decided to put pen to paper and to use the vehicle of LinkedIn, and I wrote a story about my personal experience of how I'm treated on the 27th floor of my C-suite, and then when I go from my suit to a pair of jeans, go down the elevator and walk on the street, how I'm treated in that circumstance. And there are two different worlds. And I decided to write about that.
And it was very powerful, and you wrote that in December of 2014. It got crazy great traffic on LinkedIn. And it was, and what I loved about that piece is that you gave very specific examples of, being told in a restaurant how to tip, as if you didn't know. And things like that, and the willingness of you to put yourself out there as, and make yourself vulnerable is part of the, I think part of the communication message that works so effectively. Bernard, you did another LinkedIn piece in July of this year that was also very powerful, and this was in response to, was that in response to any of the specific recent, there are too many to count, as Tony said, which
yeah, it's the ongoing story that we must do several important things in this country, and one is to modify the system of policing. And as you know, I'm a strong believer that the video cam is one major step forward. And many people have debated with me, well, you see what's going on. And I say, no, you see what's going on. The video cam is causing a narrative. It doesn't matter, it does matter, but you get my point that it's no longer, oh my God, nothing happened, or the other side of the story, at least not being told. The video cam brings it all out. And I'm not anti-police in any way. But there is a system of policing that we have to address in this day and age. I think the second thing is, it is time that we come to terms with race relations in this country, and it's only getting worse. And we have to figure out how we really take it to the next level so we don't forever judge people and draw negative connotations of people simply based by the color of your skin. And I happen to be an African American male that in society at large, the image of who I really am is not being projected on the TV screens and others, vehicles, and so there's an assumption about the fear of me and my race that's based on the mental picture that we work through.
Do you?
Can I just agree with Bernard here? You know, after President Barack Obama was elected, people started saying he opposed racial society. But I think there's been a deliberate, systematic attempt in the past few years to sweep the issue of race under the American rug or in some dark corner and say we have solved all of the problems. But we have not. The scars and stain of racism are still deeply embedded in American society. All the thing, we just look at the campaign, the election campaign. So it's not just African American, but other people of color. Right. Women. Right.
Thank you. Women are a minority.
There are forces trying to put us down. If you're gay and not straight, if you're Latino or Asian American, or you're Muslim, where are we going as a society?
First, we're human.
We're human. Right. And that's what
that one person at a time.
We're human.
That's how
and we need to be a little more human.
That's exactly right.
Let's be human.
Love, not hate. Love, not
Billie,
hate.
what are
basic stuff?
What are the lessons that you learned about? Now, some people in this audience don't know them. I'm just going to briefly just make a couple of points. Beyond the 39 Grand Slam championships in 1973, in June of 1973, when Billie was over at Wimbledon. How old were you then? Well, we don't have to talk about age.
73. No, I don't care. I don't mind age. If you're an athlete, you have to give a birth certificate when you start playing.
Yeah, well, how old were you at this time?
I was at Wimbledon. I was 29.
29. I thought I was.
I turned. I have a November birthday, so I have.
In 1973 at Wimbledon, Billie led a very sort of not secret, but you plotted inside hotel rooms, getting about 4 hours of sleep a night. Despite that,
well, that was for years. Actually,
she ended up winning Wimbledon that year, singles, doubles, and mixed doubles, despite the 4 hours.
We started our union the week before Wimbledon.
Okay.
But in 1970, there was 9 of us that signed a $1 contract. I tried to get the guys together with us, and they said get lost. So plan B was to start women's professional tennis. There was 9 of us that did a $1 contract, and we got in a lot of trouble, ostracized. We got threatened that we'd never get to play at Wimbledon, U.S. Open again. But I always thought, if we can do this right, we can send a message. It's about the message. And eventually, in 2007, we had equal prize money in the majors, men and women. To me, it was more important, not about the money, about the message that you send. Because every single player, because we're a global sport, we have players from all over the world. And I keep telling you, no matter what village you come from, what city you come from, what country you come from, you can go back and change the world.
Okay.
You can change the world.
I want to go back.
Because you've been given something very special that most people don't ever have that opportunity. And you never know who you're going to touch. But as you go through life, the main thing is don't let others define you. You're talking about how people define you as an African American man. Don't let others define you, define yourself. Right. And I realize you have to keep doing that. I mean, I was outed in '81, very tough time for me. I was just going to retire. I was finally going to make some money. We didn't make the big bucks, my generation. I call us the transition generation. I finally was going to have some security. I got outed. I lost everything within 24 hours. Every single endorsement, everything was gone. I got horrible hate letters. It was terrible. Thank God things are starting to, well, for instance, when Jason Collins came out, that he was gay, he got a call from President Obama. Things are good. He's got a job with the NBA. That would have never happened back in the 70s or 80s.
So 1981, when you were outed, how did you deal with that? How did you get past that?
Well, the one thing you do learn is who your real friends are. You really find out who cares about you as a human being when that happens. And you just figure it out. You figure out, how am I going to shift? I will not get any money directly, probably, to make a living, but I knew I wanted to help team tennis, which is men and women on the same team. We just had our 41st season last summer, and I decided that I would go to work. You know, went into the office. I was going to do that anyway, but I definitely did that. And sometimes you get sponsorships or partnerships, but it wasn't going to me directly, but I was doing good works. Because we always try to do good works in each community. It's all about community. Everything you do is how can you help make the world a better place.
It is due to Billie Jean King, though, more than 40 in 1973, starting the Women's Tennis Association, which led to equal pay at the U.S. Open that year, and then equal pay in all of professional tennis. And to this day, I believe, am I right, that tennis is the only major sport that has equal pay for men and women?
I think so, but that's If you listen to Mark about equality, I mean, he went back into the company and really checked out our women and men getting equal pay for work, and he changed it. And CEOs, it's really important that CEOs step up and do that.
So, are CEOs and leaders in business, in sports, in government, doing enough right now? I'm particularly curious about your view, Bernard, of other CEOs. We're in an era where, you know, Tim Cook has spoken out against, there are certain role model CEOs, you are one of them. Are you hoping to inspire a lot of other CEOs to step out further on social issues?
Yes, for sure. And you gave some examples, Tim Cook, Mark Benioff, just terrific.
Mark Benioff, yes, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned him first. Absolutely. Yes.
You know, Sheryl Sandberg, I mean, there are many who are speaking up, and more need to do it. Because there is a vacuum as a whole, and there's an obligation, there's a role that we can play. And I think that's what this is about. It comes with a greater responsibility that we have to think about the society in which we live in and which we exist in. And we do have a platform and we have a microphone, and I think it's very important. And it goes back to the thing that you said earlier. It is about at times getting in the way. And we should be at a stage right now in our society where we let go of all these notions and continue to learn how to coexist and to live with each other and work with each other. I mean, it's just hard at times, just being human. You know, and so adding stuff on top of that makes it even harder. The problem I have is when someone is not being allowed to play on a level playing field. And that's the sensitivity, is when you don't have an equal chance to compete or to do something or to win or to prosper. We all should have a sense of obligation to do something about that.
Don't you think CEOs should get much more, I started the Billie Jean King Leadership Initiative.
Explain that. Explain the Billie Jean King Leadership.
The workforce to have equality, inclusion, obviously diversity, all the magic words. Our job is to try to help shift that. But the thing, and I've only been in this a couple of years now, the thing I notice is that CEOs give a lot of lip service, and a few do what I think is the right thing, and that is really get connected to the Human Resources Department. I feel like it's very separate, doesn't have much say. The CEO has the most visibility. He has to be connected. I think Tony, for instance, who just started Profit and talked to us first, is totally connected to Mark. It is in the company at Salesforce. He has to report right to Mark. Mark knows exactly what's going on. That doesn't usually happen. Usually they're not connected and they don't want to really change things. They'll give lip service. They'll make, like we're doing here, but going back and truly doing it, using Salesforce is a perfect example. They've actually done it and continue to do it. That's what has to be done. The CEO has that power. He or she has that power. They have to get much more involved in equal pay for equal work and more women on boards, more people of color on boards, people with disabilities. Just, we have to change it. The CEO is the leader. He or she has that opportunity to really change things, not just talk about it. And if
I agree with that. I agree that the CEO sets the tone in the organization. The CEO can direct action of the organization. The CEO can do a lot of things.
Okay, but
That is an important role.
you're a CEO though who has, John Lewis did a sit-in on the floor of the House of Representatives over gun legislation. You wrote posts on LinkedIn about your personal experience as a black man, the dichotomous. Billie, I'm thinking here about the terrible problem we have right now in America with gun violence and racial tension. You are two of the most prominent black men out there. What can white CEOs, what should white CEOs be doing?
Well, my philosophy is very simple. Leaders must lead, whether it's in government or in business. Leaders must be headlights and not taillights. They must not be putting their fingers up in the air to see which way the wind is blowing. They must get out there and lead the way. And several unbelievable men and women, and the whole debate was going on in North Carolina. I said, if you do this, you pass this stupid legislation, we would boycott you. We would pull out.
Right.
We would not hold our convention. And we need more people to stand up, speak up, and speak out and get in the way.
Yeah. Give trouble.
Give trouble.
Over the decades, do you have any advice to corporate leaders, whether they're CEOs or whether they're managers in businesses represented in this room? How should they think about activism and communicating effectively for change?
Well, first of all, I guess if I were a CEO of a huge company, I would look at, are we getting equal pay for equal work? I mean, I really do the auditing and really find out.
Well, and Salesforce has, and Salesforce has been a great leader in that.
For real, find out for real. I feel, find out the facts, get the data. And then I would stand up there and I would truly start changing things. I think it's Jamie Dimon of Chase, I think he was saying, it's like in sports. If I have a critical mass of people over here to choose from, and he said, white guys, middle-aged white guys over here, and I'm going to choose the sports team. This team is going to beat the you-know-what out of this team because I have more to draw from. I have the best of everything to draw from. And that's what you should think about your company. It's like a team. It's like a sports team. If you have more to draw from, you're going to have a stronger team. Absolutely. If you have a stronger team, you're going to win. And you're going to win not only in the culture and the inclusion and the equality, you're going to include at the bottom line. You're going to make more money. And everyone's going to win. Shareholders are going to win. Everybody's going to win. But it's so hard to change. It's easy. It's just easy. And dominant groups know very little about subdominant groups. They're almost invisible to them. I've seen it. I've sat back and watched it. I'm not, it's like, but the subdominant group knows a lot about the dominant group because we have to navigate. As a woman, I had to learn how to navigate. I noticed my sisters of color, people with disability, we are always navigating because the culture was set by this dominant group. In sports, as a woman in sports, forget it. Usually sports are left out anyway. I was surprised they actually included us here in this community. Sports are usually left out. It's amazing how sports are left out. And if you're a woman in sport, forget it. We are not even included. We're not even thought of half the time. It is amazing. So it's great. But the point is, we have to change. The dominant group has got to stop for a second, take a beat, and start noticing and listening and talking and have dialogue with each other and realize they have the power to change it. But what I want to know is, do they feel, okay, I need this question answered. This always bothers me. Okay, I got two guys up here.
By the way,
why is it when a woman or somebody of color or something gets ahead that others feel like they've lost something? They haven't lost anything. They've actually gained something. What do they feel like they're losing, Tyler? What are they losing? No, seriously, bring everybody along. It's so much more fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can tell you that.
No, but what happened?
I can't
Why do they feel like they're losing?
But I can't answer the question for the dominant population that you described. I can only answer that. I can validate what you're saying in terms of our instincts are different because we have to go through the challenges that you're describing before we actually get to work, right?
Yeah, I always navigate. I always feel like okay, my whole life I feel like I've been on a tightrope. That's the right word. Tightrope. Trying to navigate, trying to stay balanced on this thing, trying to help change, but not get somebody so ticked off they don't listen. Because once somebody doesn't listen, you're not going to help change things. So,
but I want to go back to your point about the advice because I will tell you, and I'll give you a concrete example of my case around where voice and advocacy matters. So I talked about my passion around disparities. The gay community at Kaiser Permanente came to me and they said, you're not talking enough about disparities of the gay community and we want you to start working on that. So I started out at a very intellectual level. I said, well, you know, I have the data for race-based care that the government provides and that gives it the credibility and we can make the changes, and I really don't have it for the gay community, so we have to start with really understanding what that means because we don't have concrete data to show that there's disparities. And the gay community spoke back to me and said, no, we can tell you from our experiences, we can give you the data, we can do everything. And I resisted that in the beginning because I didn't have the tangible things to work on. And the pressure kept going up and up and up. I mean, I would go around and give speeches, and this is within Kaiser Permanente. I would have the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community at that time come to my speeches, and literally when the Q&A started, they would raise their hand and say, Bernard, we want to ask you about where are you with, right? And I was sitting up there addressing them. They stayed on me, they stayed on me, they stayed on the leadership. We started to do a different kind of research. And then we started to do more research. And then we started to better understand the issue. So you fast forward to today, we have centers of excellence that's focused specifically on the next level of care for the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender population. At Kaiser Permanente, we are committed to actually reinventing transgender care based on the lessons learned. Policy position to our board of directors, and they were excited about signing off on how we are reinventing transgender care. And that came directly from the advocacy of that community saying, you better do something about this situation. So it does matter to have your voice at the table dealing with these issues and not sitting back, simply letting something just go on that you know isn't the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
I'm glad they stayed on.
John, I want to ask you, speaking of voice, this is the last last question. I saw you on Stephen Colbert a few weeks ago. You said something about communicating and what you learned from going to hear Dr. Martin Luther King preach and seeing his father there at church. And he taught you the sort of key to communicating. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think I do.
And I think this is worth mentioning here because we are all advocates, diplomats, ambassadors for these causes that we're talking about here, and the better that we all can communicate, the more effective we could be. So let's leave it with those words.
Well, when I moved to Atlanta in 1963, 23 years old, the National Chair of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, one of the major civil rights groups, I became a member of Dr. King's father's church, and later Dr. King became a co-pastor. And he would be in the pulpit preaching, and his father would say, "Son, make it plain, make it clear, tell the story." And Dr. King had the ability to make it plain, to make it clear. And he inspired all of us to get out there and make it plain, to make it clear.
That's beautiful. I speak about women in power quite a bit on behalf of Fortune, and that's how Billie and I know each other. But I have learned from building our most powerful women franchise over the last 18 years. I've learned from all of these powerful women and many leaders I've interviewed for Fortune over 32 years, my 32 years there, that especially in this precarious world we're living in, precarious job market, real power is what you do beyond your job description, beyond your tenure, beyond your official platform. And if you lose your job tomorrow, if you can look at yourself and say, I'm still powerful, then you have real power. And these three people, our three guests, have real power. So thank you very much.
And I lost my father in 99, not knowing that they were actually posted. No one knew what was wrong with me until I was 10. That's when doctors